And this film, rather than focusing on the external threats of Spot and supervillains, it's all about my identity crisis. And I have little to no time for that. 2 stars.
Brutal. Growing up in the Hackman household. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. My name is James, joined as ever by my friend Steve. And this episode, we are talking the animated sequel, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Hey, you know the drill. If you haven't already subscribed, it'd be a great favor to us. Just a reminder, we do spoilers here, so you have been warned. James, I'm going to come right out and say it. I was so looking forward to this film. The first film, Into the Spider-Verse, was a surprise. I think everybody went in thinking, what is this film? It just blew me away with how good it is. I got a young 12-year-old, I think he was about 10 when we saw the first one. He wants to be Miles Morales. He has a Miles Morales Spider-Man suit.
Nice.
He lives for this. So I went into this like, whoo, batter up. And I got to say, I didn't like this movie. It really underwhelmed me, and it pisses me off.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I really, and this applies to the first movie as well. I want to like these movies more than I do. And you know, the first movie, I like it a fair bit, and I've seen it like 3 times. Saw it when it came out, saw it when it hit streaming, and I watched it again just the other day to remind myself. And I love the concept of the different animated styles representing the different universes and timelines and multiverses. I love the score, the score and the soundtrack. I mean, it's not my kind of movie, but it really, my kind of music, but it really fits the tone of what they're going for. You know, it's an urban, teenage, adolescent kind of, you know, there's a real kind of vibe going on there that I can really, really appreciate. These movies are spectacular to look at, but there was something about the first movie that never quite clicked. It fell just short of greatness for me, and that has only been exacerbated in this second movie, where I just felt overwhelmed by the end. It's longer, it's busier, it's there's more characters, more universes to deal with. I felt that it's sort of chaotic and kaleidoscopic when it's doing its stuff, but I also simultaneously felt that the story was being told really slowly.
Yes.
So that it felt like rushed and lethargic at the same time, which was a really odd kind of criticism, but it was like this sort of stop, start. And, you know, for me, the best stuff was Gwen Stacy. And whenever Gwen Stacy wasn't on screen, I was kind of like, get back to Gwen. She was by far and away the most interesting character, and her timeline seemed the most interesting. Her father is literally kind of hunting her down.
Right.
And the rest of it all just felt like a distraction.
In the first movie, they used a lot of the family dynamics in a really heartwarming way, and they didn't overwhelm you with it. And when they did it, they even threw in some comic relief with it. I remember in the first film when his dad is the cop and dropping him off at school, and he's over the speaker saying, I love you. I thought that was funny. It's touching. It's heartwarming. It shows the relationship that they have. I thought this film was just melodrama taken to 11. There couldn't be enough expositions of I don't understand you, why are you lying to me, why. It's just, for God's sake, get on with this. And then the main villain, Spot, is hardly in the film, and basically the whole movie, like there's like 2 hours of this film where they're really just trying to fight other good guys, and it's the good guys fighting good guys, and I felt almost like the writer is working out his own personal trauma in this film. It's like, you don't deserve to be Spider-Man. Yes, I do. No, you were never meant to be. Yes, I do. I'm a validated person. You can't take that away from me. And I'm like, God, get me out of here.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you highlight the Spot, who is nominally like the main villain here, because I thought that was a really interesting choice, because it's a villain that, you know, is not highlighted much. It's a minor league, third tier adversary, but with a really kind of fascinating ability or disability, if you like, that he blames Spider-Man for giving him. But you can see also how it's going to cause complications within the multiverse, because essentially he's like his own multiverse. He's just full of these, he's covered in portals essentially, which he slowly accidentally comes to realize that it can actually sort of transport him through dimension. But yeah, you're right, as soon as he's identified and established, he kind of disappears for half the movie, while Miles Morales is dragged back into the multiverse again, where there's this spider society of all of these different Spider-Men from all of their different universes who have to kind of work together. And they spend a lot of time sort of establishing the fact, it's called like sort of these canon moments.
Yeah.
You're like, that was implied already in the first movie.
Right.
That there are certain beats that are part of Spider-Man lore, and that whomever adopts the mantle of Spider-Man within a particular timeline will have will experience these events or comparable events.
There's a rhythm, and there's going to be sacrifices involved.
Yes, essentially, you're going to lose a loved one. There's going to be like a police captain or whatever. But you're like, I know all of this. And then Gwen Stacy has that kind of quite sweet line, which she's like, in every time she's resistant to get involved with Mars, because she's like, in every timeline, there's a Gwen Stacy who falls for Spider-Man, and it does not end well. She's the tragic love interest that tends to die. And you're like, we established all of that already. But they make this a huge plot point where they all stand around and talk about it and point them out to each other in a way that you're like, this is wasting my time. Get back to fighting the Spot.
It's done ad nauseum. And what happens with the Spider Society is you have so many variants of Spider-Man that it actually loses its weight, even though it's a bad guy analogy. But I've said before, in the Matrix, give me one Agent Smith is terrifying. 1,000 Agent Smiths becomes a cartoonish bore. And that's what I found is if you got 2 or 3 variants from 2 or 3 multiverse worlds of Spider-Man, that's really interesting and has an interesting dynamic that can play off one another. But once you get 1,000 or 10,000 variants of Spider-Man, it loses all of its heft, its weight. It just becomes
a gag, essentially.
Yeah.
It's like, here's one that's a pig, here's one that's a cat.
Lego, and one's
Lego. I mean, the little Lego moment, is a nice little sort of doffing of the cap from Phil Lord and Chris Miller, who were the writers of this movie, who also did the Lego movie. So during a montage sequence when he's like literally going through different dimensions, just to have a little Lego one, it's like, okay, fine, and they don't make a big deal out of it. It's a pretty sort of self-contained little moment, and it's like, okay, that's fine. But I agree, when there becomes so many of these characters, then their impact and their journey and their relevance just is completely diluted, which is a shame, because this movie, unlike some of the other multiverse movies we've been talking about recently, if you unpack this one and look at each of the different incarnations and iterations separately, there's a lot of really good, strong, bold, creative work going on here. Each of the individual universes, I think they've said that there are 6 main different timelines here, each of which have been animated in a different, unique style. There's a whole like Indian infused timeline.
And whatever. Mumbai, Manhattan's Mumbai.
Mumbatan or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And it looks great. But when you take all of those different elements and you literally just kind of like mash them all up together and throw them at the screen simultaneously, it just becomes sort of this sort of overwhelming kaleidoscopic cacophony of sound and vision, and and all of the creative intricacy is lost.
I agree. There was moments where I thought, oh, wow, this is really visual, even though I'm not enjoying the film, it's visually stunning. And then I found it visually irritating. Like there was elements that were visually irritating. I know they think this is being clever, but this is not working for me. It's just, it's like you've just taken a bunch of paint and throw it against the palette and just splattered it everywhere. And that's the canvas that you're gonna use.
Yeah, I know that some of it has sort of character motifs. Like I think Miles Morales is he's a aspiring graffiti artist, so I think there's a lot of that kind of imagery. There's a nice sort of 4-color comic book print moment as well, when you can you see all the sort of the dotted the dotted version of that, and so in those sort of individual moments you're like, okay, I can see this, but it just felt like it was too busy, there's too much going on, which collectively only served to sort of dissipate any real sort of drama that was going on. I was, I'm there for the story, and I'm just being overwhelmed with visuals.
And this thing could have been chopped 20 minutes off of this film and nothing would have been lost, because there's a lot of exposition that goes absolutely nowhere.
Yeah, and just like every other film these days, would be it the new Fast and Furious or whatever, it's big and baggy and overlong, and then ends on a cliffhanger, suggesting and yet we're only halfway through. It's like, really? Well, you better have saved it all for last, all the best stuff.
Well, it's almost like in the first film, it felt very tight and they were doing something innovative and new and they weren't sure how it was going to be received. And then when it was received really, really well, it almost gave them in their minds carte blanche to bloat it and take everything up to 11. And they lost being able to navigate something tight, something manageable, something interesting. And in the end, almost like our review of the recent Flash movie, it becomes a bit of a hot mess.
Yeah, I mean, it's calling back to a film you referenced a minute ago. It's like The Matrix. That first Matrix came out and it was so perfectly self-contained and it was doing something so different and so new that everyone just went, okay, wow. And obviously the studio threw money at it and went, make more. So the Wachowskis turned around and went, oh, yeah, sure. Yes, this is, we have more ideas. And everything that came after that was a pale imitation of what it was before, and it was just like more, just do more. It was more rather than better, and rather than continuing anything in a significant way or in a way that felt justified, pre-planned, coherent. It was just okay. You want more of this of the cool stuff? Here's more and more of the cool stuff.
Yeah, it's like I said, one Agent Smith is terrifying. Oh, if one's terrifying, then we'll give you 1,000 and about 1,000,000. And what ended up happening was, like you said, subsequently, nothing ever came close to measuring up to the original film, to the point where it almost diminishes the original film. And with this trilogy that we're obviously going to see from the Spider-Verse universe, if they don't slam dunk the third film, it's going to diminish the original film.
Oh, and if it hasn't already, I mean, I know they were also planning a Spider-Women spin-off. Which will have the Gwen Stacy character and also the motorbike riding Issa Rae's character, the motorbike riding Spider-Woman, and a few I say a few others. What's almost certainly going to happen is going to be dozens and dozens and dozens more female Spider-Man characters, and you're just like, they see the limitless potential of this, and it's all because they have an Oscar-winning hit on their hands in the first movie, and so they're like, well, we've established that there are infinite multiverses, so that means infinite, Oscar-winning hit movies, right? That remains to be seen. Although, and it should be pointed out, it does really feel like we're in the minority here. This movie has come out to explosively glowing, over the top reviews. People are falling over themselves to call it like even better than the first one, blah blah blah. And I'm sorry, I just don't see it. I don't get it.
I don't get it either. And I'm wondering too if there's almost a hesitancy to critique too strongly anything that has such good representation in it. This film, if nothing else, has incredible representation, which in the original movie, I gave it, we weren't doing reviews yet, but I would have sung its praises. I obviously liked it much more than you did. So James, obviously we were underwhelmed, but we have to have a unit of measurement. What are we going to grade across the universe, across the Spider-Verse?
I mean, there's radioactive spiders. There's
let's go with how many wrongly. It's the wrong spider that he gets bit with, which is one of the plot points in the film.
Dimensionally displaced radioactive spiders.
Would you? How many dimensionally displaced radioactive spiders would you give this film?
Okay, for me, the biggest problem of this movie is there's just too much of it. As I've tried to say, it's just layers upon layers of, good stuff just being like heaped upon it ad nauseum. And so for that, I don't want to really kind of kick it down the street too much, because I mean, it didn't work for me and it completely overwhelmed me and exhausted me. But I do want to recognize the fact that the individual elements of it are all present and correct pretty much, and still good. And particularly, as I said, the Gwen Stacy character and her storyline was working for me. You know, Miles Morales less so. It just felt like he was retreading a lot of the stuff that had come before, and there was too much of everything else for me to really kind of click with any of it. So I'm going to sort of go somewhere in the middle, and I'm going to give this one 3 dimensionally displaced spiders out of 5. Because if you're going to see it at all, you know, go see it big and loud on the big screen. I did see it in IMAX, and maybe that was part of it. I saw it in IMAX. It was late, and it had been a long day, and maybe it just was like tsunami after tsunami after tsunami of multicolored Spider-Man, and it was just a bit too much. But I do want to give credit where it's due, and it still looks and it still sounds pretty incredible.
Yeah. I'm going to go a little lower. I'm going to give it 2 wrongly dimensional radioactive spiders. I just thought the melodrama, as I said earlier, was just cranked up. I get teenage angst immediately turns me off, and a film that just seems solely
says a man with 3 children.
Well, and another one on the verge of being a teenager, you know. But you know, we don't have a lot of angst in this family, and there's not a lot. You don't understand me.
Just you wait.
No, it's just,
you're setting yourself up now for, as you said, your youngest.
I've already had 2. I've gotten 2 that have gone through. And by and large, we avoided a lot of drama. And
don't come crying to me when he doesn't understand. You don't understand him.
You don't understand me. And the whole, even with the Miguel character, you know, we've got to. You're never supposed to exist, as I said earlier. And I'm just going, oh my gosh, somebody's working through their own personal issues in the writer's room right out on the film. And I don't really want to be drawn into other people's trauma. I would rather just watch a fun superhero film.
Isn't that all of art, though? Isn't all of art, you know, literally being dragged into other people's trauma?
I think this is why I've always been much more of a Superman and an Iron Man fan than a Batman fan. You know, Batman.
Because they're emotionally closed off characters.
That's it. Michael Keaton was pretty cool. That's why I liked him. And Adam West, the campy, but the whole, my mom and father are killed, and I have all these emotional attachment issues, and I have to hide my. Whereas Robert Downey's like, God, I love being Iron Man. I get to do cool things, and you know, Superman. I don't like all that inner turmoil and angst. Just there's enough problems in the external. I don't have to focus on the internal. And this film, rather than focusing on the external threats of Spot and supervillains, it's all about my identity crisis. And I have little to no time for that. 2 stars.
Brutal. Growing up in the Hackman household.
That's it.
It takes no prisoners.
Yeah, that's right. You got emotional issues. Go watch a comedy. Sort it out.
Talk to your mother.
That's it. But that's what James and I have to say about across the I'm getting this movie's title even screwed up all the time. Spider-Man Across the Multiverse.
No, Across the Spider-Verse.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, that's what James and I thought about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
There you go.
But what do you think? I mean, obviously, there's a lot of people who love this film. I've seen the reviews coming out with other reviewers, and they love it. James and I are less than impressed, but start a dialogue in the comments box below, James.
Yeah, what are we missing? And I mean that very genuinely, very openly, very honestly. You know, why is this clicking so strongly with you, if it is? You know, what's resonating in such an emphatic way? Of course, if you agree with us, we want to hear from you too.
Till next week.
That was very enlightening. Bye-bye.
You're wonderful to see. You ought to be in pictures. Oh, what a hit you would be.